According to recent reports, there's a real nuclear threat by Iran. A number of Western nations are pushing to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear agreement once again. Now, to chat about this in more detail is U.S. political reporter and the host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, will a new agreement be struck, and will it truly make any difference? Or will the regime keep doing what it's doing when it comes to nuclear capabilities?
Right. And the two are not mutually exclusive, unfortunately. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? So we thought that the United States took some distance from the nuclear deal because of everything going on, right? So let's line up the evidence here. You have the Iran regime cracking down on peaceful protesters. You've had the highest number of executions that we've had in a very long time in just the last month. I mean, they're maiming, they're raping, they're killing peaceful protesters, young men and women who are just coming out onto the streets fighting for freedom. You have the Iranian regime doubling down and really dedicating itself to going after U.S. Troops in Syria. You have them not cooperating with the IAEA in terms of transparency with their nuclear program. And every day we have a different report. They're a week away, they're 2 months away, they're 3 months away. They may already have the nuclear bomb, but on the other hand, you have the United States. We just found out through leaked documents that they have been meeting secretly with diplomatic members of Iran's regime to try to get some sort of deal. They went to Oman to try to get a deal. They talked to them on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in last year and previous years. So they are hell-bent on getting back into a deal, despite the fact that the Iran regime has shown such bad behavior, both at home and in the region. So, that it doesn't show a good sign of strength to Iran's regime when they are getting away with literally murder and able to get a deal and to loosen billions of dollars that will push them right back into doing everything that they're doing, supporting terrorism in the region, supporting terrorism at home, the executions, etc.
Lisa, 3 Europeans returned home over the weekend after being released by Iran in a prisoner swap. Tehran said there was no reason for Europeans to be arrested if they were not exploited by foreign security services.
The reason that they are arrested is because of prisoner swaps like this. Who did they get out of jail? A guy who was found convicted on trying to set off a bomb in France. Of course, the bomb plot was foiled, but 2 Austrians and a Dane were held inside Iran's prisons and were released over the weekend in exchange for this terrorist. This is exactly why they collect these pawns. They use them as political weapons. And of course, the Europeans, and I know the United States has done so in the past, well, we have to negotiate because we want to get these people out. But there's a reason why the United States always kept this. We do not negotiate with terrorists to prevent situations like this, or to prevent this feeling on behalf of the Iran regime that they can do this. But nonetheless, we do have Americans being held in Iran's prisons. We do have Europeans. We have others. They have a whole slew of them. And that's the way they're going to get their terrorists out of prison in different countries as well.
Sadly, 3 Israeli soldiers were killed over the weekend in a terrorist incident along the Egyptian border, Lisa. Now, one of the soldiers died after exchanging gunfire with an Egyptian police officer.
Yeah, so these two young, and they're so young, and it's horrific when you see their pictures. But the two were killed. Then the IDF responded, and when they got to the scene, there was gunfire, and a third was killed in that way. Look, there's never a day of peace, or never a day when these young soldiers who are 18, 19, 20 years old can let their hair down, can relax, can take a sigh of relief. They cannot let their guards down. And of course, something like this happens when a teenager is just assigned to be on the Egyptian border, and of course lose their lives in this senseless tragedy.
Yeah, very sad. There's word coming from Saudi Arabia that it will be slashing oil supply, which will mean much higher gas prices for many of us here in North America, and poor timing as well, with so many of us planning road trips this summer.
Exactly. And that's why the news comes as bad news today. Here in the United States, everyone's talking about how summer vacations may be put on hold because gas prices were already high. people dealing with inflation of all sorts in terms of going to the supermarket and the cost of ordinary things, and of course gasoline being one of those things. And now we'll see, of course, a hike at the pump again with this news that Saudi Arabia will be cutting supply. Of course, Joe Biden's administration has not been obviously in favor of bringing it home domestically to have our own reserves, to use our own reserves. So unfortunately, we will have to be playing along with the global response, which will, of course, be a rise in prices. And I know that will trickle into Canada as well. And you will, unfortunately, deal with the consequences in the same way.
Lisa, the war in Sudan continues. The northeastern African nation descended into chaos after fighting broke out in mid-April between the military and paramilitary rapid support forces. Both the United States and Saudi Arabia say, you know what, it's time for a new ceasefire here.
Yeah, they can say that as many times as they'd like, and they've said it multiple times, but unfortunately how the ceasefires have not stuck. They continue going back to fighting. Look, you're looking at basically two rebel groups who both want the future of that country, and it's almost like in their eyes up for grabs, right? So these two armies were supposed to actually merge and work together, and here you have greed, egos, so many wonderful ingredients that make for this awful, crisis and civil war. So unfortunately, so many casualties, so many people who are being affected by this, and of course, we don't see any end in sight. The international community getting involved, trying to broker a ceasefire, but to no avail so far.
China's defense minister defended sailing a warship across the path of an American destroyer and a Canadian frigate cruising the Taiwan Strait, saying it was in retaliation to so-called freedom of navigation patrols that are a so-called provocation to China.
Yes, trickle, trickle, trickle. Oh, any day now we're going to see, it looks like China not only moving closer to invading Taiwan, but actually doing so. And each one of these scenarios, they're almost testing the waters, literally and figuratively in this case, getting closer and closer to what they will call an invasion of Taiwan, and what they will defend as their right. This is what they have been doing for years, is defining their right, quote unquote, right, I should say, and trying to basically just partition off parts of the seas, parts of Taiwan. The nations of that region are, of course, worried. They've come to the United States. They've held meetings. I'm talking about South Korea. We're talking about Vietnam, even Japan, all worried about how this will go. The Philippines as well. But of course, China marches on. This is a plan that has been in the works for many years, and now we are watching it inch forward into implementation.
Does the U.S. military really have many resources left after giving so much to Ukraine in its war with Russia in order to help defend Taiwan against Chinese aggression?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there were reports late last year talking about how we are very much spread thin. That we're talking about military production, right? So because we use so much of our military resources to fund and fuel Ukraine, there's not much left for Taiwan. But from what I'm hearing from my sources, they have doubled down on the intention of helping Taiwan, and they know that it's very close on the horizon, so they will try to replenish. There are a lot of lawmakers calling for a preemptive giving resources to Taiwan preemptively in order to prepare and to perhaps and hopefully deter China from moving forward.
That must be a real challenge for the United States and the Biden administration right now, having to look at itself as being a world police force, so to speak, and it must be really challenging. I mean, financially, and just, maybe having to tap into NATO forces as well, and having more countries join forces, because the United States is still a powerhouse, but it can't do it alone.
It's true. But you know how I think the frustration with many of us covering foreign policy right now is that it's like a pick and choose buffet of foreign policy issues, and how the Biden administration sees them, right? So look at our own southern border. Probably our biggest national security issue right now is our southern border, and it's being ignored. Just yesterday, our Border Patrol, head of Border Patrol resigned. The Border Patrol agents were celebrating. I mean, imagine how incompetent this individual is. Obviously, Mayorkas, another incompetent individual, people have called for him to resign. We have a crisis at our border, and it's not being taken care of. We look at the Iran regime that is marching on. I mean, the brutality, the billions that they're putting into global terror, the fact that we can stop this by moving away and sanctioning Iran's regime, by putting pressure on the regime and supporting the freedom protesters. But instead, we're choosing to give them billions, give them their frozen assets, and to strike a deal with them. So it's really pick and choose. And Ukraine, well, a lot of people believe, look, nobody wants Russia to invade Ukraine. Nobody wants a war there. And really everyone feels bad for the people there. And we wish that we could stop this war. But a lot of people think that there has been a disproportionate amount of money and funds and military aid given to Ukraine, given the fact that they will not be able to defeat Russia in this endeavor. So what are we putting money into is the question. Now, given that point, are we now spread so thin that we can't help Taiwan? An actual, something that we're more invested in terms of stopping China from marching forward with its hegemonic aspirations. So I think, it's interesting to look at the United States as the world's police, but they have not been consistent in that being their foreign policy strategy. We're seeing more of a splotchy strategy, maybe a lack of strategy, where the Biden administration picks and chooses where it wants to spend its assets, where it wants to focus on, and what side it wants to take.
Let's focus on TikTok for just a moment right now. Lisa, it's very popular with a lot of young people. Millions of TikTok videos all over the world here. Now, Ottawa is having federal employees take TikTok off of their government telephones, and now European Parliament is urging member nations to adopt a TikTok ban. Can you explain?
Yeah, well, look, the TikTok issue is almost a little too little too late, because so many people have it. It is so popular. People rely on it for their income. I mean, for their livelihoods, which is insane. But it is so popular that it will be very hard to contain. Now, there are states here in the United States as well that are trying to ban. They've already taken it off of government employee phones, trying to at least curtail it to the extent that they can. European nations trying to do the same. Why is it that they've only noticed now what a threat this app is after allowing it to get so popular, allowing them to have access to all of our personal information? I, thank God, do not have TikTok for that reason, but we have enough social media. We do not need this app that will give access to the Chinese. And now it's like, flowers of feathers in the wind. Try to collect all of this and try to, contain it. And you think it's going to be very difficult to get all European nations, the Canadians, the Americans, everyone on board to get this app off of their phones.
Yeah, it'd be a real challenge, absolutely. She's our foreign affairs expert and host of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.